Welcome to the Bladtcast. We're referring to this as the Teth-Bladtcast, although we have a series of subtitles for it that we might run through in a moment. As always, I am Christian Blatt, talking about Warner Brothers Black Adam film with the one, the only Will Sterling _ Hello, sir.
Hello. What you always say? You are as mentioned, Christian Blatt. What if one day you were just somebody else? Don't you ever choose? You don't ever want to be somebody else?
I would
Say
like to be
Shazam. Who do you turn into? Will you be?
I
You'd be White Adam.
I turn into me, but taller.
Okay.
So like
Okay.
I'm no stronger. I don't have any powers. I'm just like, and it's not crazy. I'm like 4 inches taller.
But honestly, I could use it. That would go a long way for me. I'd be like, you know what? This is not too bad. I look a little taller.
No, it would not be too bad. In any case, Will and I will be joined by a couple other friends. We'll be speaking with the Raging Rhino, John Nolan, and our pal Jeff Winstead of The Alternate and other work as well, which we'll make sure to get to when he's on. But you and I went last Friday. We made these plans on the air on the Bladtcast last week. We went and surprise, surprise, it was an IMAX screening of Black Adam. And just as always, these episodes, we're going to get into the spoilers. If you don't like the spoilers, don't watch the show. And I forget who it is, but there's somebody who doesn't care about the spoilers. They always watch ours and they hear all the spoilers and then they decide if they still want to see it or not. Yeah. So for that person, stay with us. Anybody who doesn't like the spoilers. But big picture, big reactions. You tweeted something that I actually want you to kind of echo. You had a great point that the positive comments about this movie are true. And the criticisms about this movie also true. So, sort of peeling back a little bit of what you were going to say. Let's start there.
Yeah, it's sort of, I don't know. It's kind of a confounding move. Like we talked about it a little bit after it was over. Like certainly not a bad movie. It's also not a great movie, but it's like, it's not so not great enough that it's bad, but it's not so bad that it's not great. You know, it's like the strangest, like, it's entertaining. There's things to like about it. It's full of problems, but I think the entertaining elements pull through greater than the like, oh, well, this is a piece of shit. Like, I don't think anyone's really walking away being like, wow, that was a huge dumpster fire. I think it leaves a lot to be wanted, but it also gives a lot. You know what I mean? It's like there's so much happening and so little at the same time. It's kind of weird. So it's sort of like it's a perfectly fine movie. You know, like if ever there was a movie in the rating scale, not fine plus, that was 100% perfectly fine, that would be this movie for me.
Yeah, it's like, obviously Rotten Tomatoes has that certified fresh. You have certified fine, which whereas you're saying not great, not bad. To you, bad was Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness because you walked out of that movie.
Oh, I fucking hated that movie.
I know. Yeah. In terms of movies you finished from the, whether it's this iteration of DC, but DC characters, is there one of those where it ended and you were like, that was awful?
Awful?
Yeah, just like flat out, like you were saying, awful. This is fine. But a movie based on a DC property from really any era where you were like, I mean, it could be Superman 4, but I think even that, it's like, I don't like watching Christopher Reeve fly around,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think in the past I've been more of an apologist, but even the first time I saw the first Suicide Squad, I was like, it's still not the worst movie in the world. You know what I mean? Like there was still plenty of things to like about it. Maybe Catwoman with Halle Berry.
Yeah, I've not seen that one.
Doesn't really.
And I'm going to bring in our friend John Nolan because I can see him in the waiting room. He was nodding.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah, John Nolan of the Raging Rhino Pod at Raging Rhino Pod. We were speaking before we started. Will was not surprised to hear that for the most part you liked this movie because he remembered that you saw Joss Whedon's Justice League 7 times in the theater. So, but for
You're never gonna let
you
me live that down, are you?
is the basement, like, the floor of DC properties on screen, is it Catwoman with Halle Berry?
Close. I would put that as the second worst.
Oh, what's the worst?
Return of Swamp Thing.
Oh,
Absolutely
okay,
the worst.
legit.
Oh, yeah. That
I
goes
actually
even
only
further
ever saw
back
the
than I would have
first
thought.
Swamp
I
Thing.
only saw the first one also.
Yeah.
Rift Tracks just did a live show last month of that
Ooh.
movie, and yeah, it's even worse than I remember it. And that's the
Even
only way to watch it is if you have guys like them making fun of it as it goes along.
and you still hate it even while they're making fun of it. It's that
Yeah.
bad.
Well, in any case, we're just sort of kind of going big, and our pal Jeff Winstead's going to join us in a little bit when we start talking about some of the characters.
Okay.
So that'll be the part of this conversation where we're still talking about the movie, but we start to focus in on the side characters. That's when I want to bring Jeff in. But Jeff didn't see the movie. He only goes to movies when I think when I drag him there. He drove to LA to see. I actually forget now what he'll be able to remind me. But I was in Palm Springs and I made him see Endgame in the theater. Going back a few years, but either he sees them with me or he waits till he watches them at home. So if there's anybody who misses the HBO Max, day and date release schedule, I think it's our pal Jeff Winstead. But to Will's point about the movie, if you go into a superhero movie starring The Rock, specifically starring The Rock, I don't know what you're expecting that this movie didn't deliver on.
Yeah.
It's just like it's mostly fun. Definitely things that don't work as well as they probably thought. Some of the side characters, I'm like, all right, they're her brother who's singing "Baby Come Back." I'm like, man, they could have squeezed some funny into that character that they decided they didn't really need. You know what I mean? It's like it's a half-hearted attempt at a character we've seen before.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, if they could have found a Middle Eastern Josh Gad, perhaps, something like that.
You don't think that's kind of what that guy how he fit? I thought he was
Josh
funny.
Gad's a lot funnier than that guy.
But Josh Gad's not Middle Eastern.
No, I know. I'm just saying, just his DNA. But in any case, and Will and I saw it. We saw it in the IMAX. I appreciated seeing it in the IMAX because, some of the sequences definitely looked really cool. And look, I like some of these more morally ambiguous characters. I like watching them throw people around. That was some of the criticism of Zack Snyder's Man of Steel was like, man, Superman's just like killing people. He killed General Zod. And it's like, well, there's no doubt that this guy's going to do that. Just sort of big picture stuff, John. What did you think of Black Adam?
I liked it. I didn't love it. I thought it was a good movie. I thought.
So wait, does that mean you're only going to see it in the theater 5 times because you
yes.
didn't? Yeah. Okay.
Maybe 6.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I think that the character itself of Black Adam is very stoic and humorless. So in that respect, I think The Rock did a pretty damn good job of portraying him. It's kind of tough to pull off that kind of character as the star of a movie. I mean, there's a reason why Drax has not had his standalone yet. So
yeah, although in terms of wrestlers getting standalone, John Cena was able to bring us Peacemaker. But you're right, Drax is a much more similar character to this.
Yes,
because he doesn't really get things, and a Drax movie, I don't think would work as well as this does,
Right, exactly. But yeah, and I liked the Justice Society in this. I like that they kept it a small group and then didn't get overcrowded, because the Justice Society can, at times it has as many as 24 members in it. And for the most part, I like the choices that they made.
Yeah, and we'll kind of get into some of those characters. Our pal Dominicus Saxon chimes in. He gives this a 90% because they accomplished what they wanted to for the most part, and it wasn't Morbius. I think that's important. Any movie that isn't Morbius immediately gets an automatic 10%, I think, in terms of rating. As soon as it's like, oh wait, this movie's not Morbius. Okay, great.
So any movie.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And
like
by the
Lady
way, at some
Chatterley's
point, Will,
lover.
you should watch that just to watch Matt Smith dance.
I don't know. It's one of those things where like the Munsters, where it's like forcing myself
Oof,
for the
it was
sake of the
rough.
podcast. But I'm like, in a normal world, I'd be like, this is not good. It's a waste of my time. I'll turn it off.
Fair.
So maybe just let me know where that scene is, and I'll just YouTube that scene.
I'm sure. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there's a YouTube
Oh, yeah.
of that. And Dominica Saxon chimes in, decent acting, good storyline, flowed the whole 2 hours. I enjoyed this one without knowing anything about Black Adam. And he goes again with the 90%. I didn't know anything about this character. I had to ask Will afterwards. I'm like, oh, so this is like, is that in the comics that he's a similar origin to Shazam? You're like, yep. I'm like, no idea, and but it was not a problem to know nothing about this, because this guy's been underground for 5,000 years,
Yeah.
so it's fine. No
You're
worries.
just like everybody else.
Yeah,
in the movie.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have Dr. Fate precognition of the future. I also don't need to know the past either. And I think that's important, because The Rock has a built-in audience. And if like their friends started telling them, like, the first like 20 minutes were super confusing, because they're trying to explain how this relates to other DC movies that I didn't say, is like, nah, so I thought that he did a good job. And Will, you talked about how there were things that weren't perfect. There was one little story point that I think is so easily fixed, and that was the fact that he automatically speaks English.
Yeah, with no
he
accent.
wakes up in that kid's room,
Yeah.
which I'm like, okay, this is going to be crazy, because he's going to be like, I don't know what you're saying, and instead of, giving us something, oh, wait, I'm going to use one of these powers that you didn't know I had, and my ear is going to flutter, and then everything's going to be fine. Or I don't know, he's going to speed read like the robot in Short Circuit. That's right. That's an old man reference. I'm here for it. But John's here for it too, so that helps. But instead, it was just like, nah, let's just go ahead and speak English. And I guess it would have slowed the movie down. I'm going to assume they must have addressed it at some point. But what'd you think, Will?
I'm sure there's a version of the script where that's written in there, and everyone was like, listen, we got to be honest with ourselves. We only want to hear The Rock say the foreign words a couple of times, because it doesn't sound authentic when he says them. Yeah. And also, he can't do an accent. So, like, let's just, you know what? He just wakes up and he's fine. Like, I could just, like, at a note session where someone's like, all right, it is what it is. But yeah, it's The Rock. It's exactly.
Yeah. Look, we're all smelling what he's cooking. I mean, let's just go. Like,
even the one guy in the room was like, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, Will's guy, who we always talk about in the back of the room, even he was like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
We can smell what he's cooking. He doesn't have to show us the recipe. It's fine. You know what? Just let him serve it out in big heaping bowls, steaming bowls of what The Rock is cooking. I mean, I thought that I think it's smart when superhero movies have kid characters that are a big focus. That kid was not annoying, as sometimes happens in your movies. He was good at skateboarding, but he wasn't, a lot of times they give kids skills that maybe they shouldn't have. You know what I mean? It's just like, he wasn't also a computer hacker, which is what seems to usually happen in like every movie.
Well, that was before, I think, social media so much, where like kids were hackers, until it became like everybody's doing it on their phones. Like, it's not cool anymore. This is a random story, but it makes me laugh when I think about it every time, because it's so sad. Originally in Halloween 5, there was supposed to be a little boy character opposite the little girl, who was supposed to ride a BMX bike, and he was supposed to be able to do tricks and some stunts, and like he was gonna like ward off Michael Myers like with his bike in one sequence. And they gave the kid a bike, and he was trying to practice with the bike, and then they shot some sequences and they cut out all of the BMX stuff because the kid was so bad at riding the bike. I can't imagine being that little kid getting to set and be like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking impress everybody with all my tricks.
You
think he might have told like tire skid, and everyone's like, oh fuck, we gotta this kid is uniquely bad at riding a bike.
You think he might have told his friends about how awesome he was going to be in that movie?
I'm sure he did. What BMX skills?
He like brought his best friend to the premiere, and it was like, I thought you were in the movie. And so did I, Johnny. So did I. But what are your thoughts, John, in terms of the world building, and some of the additional characters, which, because he was a guy underground for 5,000 years and just in a different state of consciousness, really, they were a little bit more important than they are in some movies. Not entirely dissimilar than Thor, though. I mean, he's like completely fish out of water, but I think a different approach to that. What did you think about sort of the Black Adam being in the real world and interacting with humans?
Yeah, that whole fish out of water, just like you said, it works well for the character. I also like, talking about world building. I like the fact that it really didn't dawn on me until a day or so after I watched the movie, that pretty much, with the exception of maybe one scene, the entire movie is set in Kahndaq. So it's a nice little isolated area. So you can do things with that you can't do with the rest of the DCEU. You can create your own little microcosm of characters and interactions with each other, and that actually kind of benefits this character, because he is by nature, in the comics and in this movie, an isolationist. So that helps with his style. And as far as the side characters go, I didn't even think about the brother in the van and singing along to what was Baby Come Back, right? But yeah, I did like the additional characters. I think if they go by the comics, that those the kid on the skateboard, Amon, and oh gosh, what was the lady's name?
Oh, the lead, yeah.
But if it's anything like the comics, then there's going to be bigger plans for them. Possibly creating a Black Adam's family the same way they have the Shazam family.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And of course, I think that properties like this don't get made without factoring in the potential for sequels. We'll refer back to the movie. There's specifics as to how they unfold in the movie, but I do want to bring our pal Jeff Winstead in because we're going to talk about some of these additional characters. And nice. Jeff, in addition to creating his own comic book, The Alternate, he is also the author of The Last Battle of the Revolution, which is available on Amazon. That's where I got it. I didn't ask for a freebie. I bought it. And Jeff, welcome back to the Bladtcast. Great to have you.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, remember to lean into that mic that we talked about earlier. You sound like you're in Palm Springs. That's how far away you sound.
We'll get it working.
Okay, no worries. So we'll, Jeff, I wanted to talk to you as we start to go through these Justice Society characters that are in this film. And I think that, look, I think Black Adam is an interesting character. I think The Rock does a good job with it. But in some ways, I felt like the Justice Society stole this movie, specifically Dr. Fate. I know, Will, you and I talked a little bit after the movie. Give us your thoughts on sort of, let's go through the characters that we got and what you thought about them, and then we'll bring Jeff in for some thoughts.
Yeah, Dr. Fate's a character I never anticipated or expected to see in like a movie of this size, maybe, a CW show or something. So it was really cool to see him done pretty much perfectly. I mean, in terms of the visuals, his costume, Christian, we didn't even talk about the whole Ankh symbol. We had a Vinnie Vincent connection there.
I didn't even think about it.
I know. He was originally Dr. Fate was a member of KISS for a while. Pierce Brosnan is great casting for that, and he definitely captures the golden age vibe of that, because he's also kind of an old man. Like, I've always wanted to see an old man Justice Society movie where everybody's like John Wesley Shipp as age, playing those characters, because that's kind of how they've been drawn since they got incorporated into the universe. So would love to see like Wildcat and some other of those like traditional characters. But it was fun. Like, same kind of thing. Besides television, like Atom Smasher, Cyclone, and Hawkman were people I didn't really anticipate seeing in movies. I thought Hawkman was a little over the top. I don't know why he's so rich. Like, it was just like, hey, we couldn't get Batman, so here's this guy, and then he has an X1 jet apparently. Like, there's just some little things about the Hawkman where he that character in particular was written pretty flat, and it's like, that actor did a good job with a flat character, but like there were no dimensions or emotions. He was just very much like a team leader, tough
Right.
guy,
Alpha
Hawkman.
male, yeah.
Yeah.
Did they do the reincarnation stuff at all?
No, they didn't get into it. So,
Okay.
I'll
Because
just
that could at
harder.
least explain how he was so wealthy, I guess. Like
Yeah.
over
And-
time, he had built up this
And
vast fortune.
the actor's name is Aldous Hodge.
Yes.
Ivan Soto liked him. I thought that I thought it was a fun characterization, but yeah, I mean it's like he is a Bruce Wayne, Tony Stark type. That if that doesn't fit in with the character, then I can agree with you in wondering on that. Before I ask what you think, Jeff, about sort of these characters, John, because you saw them on the in this movie, I wanted to kind of let you go first in terms of getting to actually see and how you felt they were represented on the screen in Black Adam.
Yeah, I like all of the Justice Society characters. Hawkman, while being a little one-dimensional, he was still kind of that typical alpha male team leader, trying to get everybody in line and do what he says. He did have a couple of funny moments, especially when Atom Smasher was kind of screwing up. And it's like, okay, you and me, we're gonna have a talk.
Yeah.
That was and I'm glad they didn't overdo that too much. Of course, Dr. Fate, that's one of those characters that I've always I've really enjoyed over the years. He's had some great stories in the comics, and also if you watch the Young Justice cartoon on HBO Max, he's got some great stories there as well. And Pierce Brosnan, I mean, he was just spot on, perfect. I love the whole nonchalance while Hawkman and Black Adam are fighting in the apartment. He's just sitting back. He's like, I know when to go into a fight. I know when to stay out of it.
I'm basically saying this for the joke because it made me laugh in my head. I think Pierce Brosnan was so good as Dr. Fate. He made Benedict Cumberbatch look like Timothy Dalton. But anyway, I don't even think I really think that. I just wanted to say it.
You see, at least with Dr. Fate, you know why he's Dr. Fate. You still don't know
why is he
Dr.
so
Strange
why is he so
strange.
Fate?
You don't know
Why is he so fate?
Yeah.
No,
you
yeah,
know.
wait, we know because he sees. Yeah, it's true. He knows the fate. And any other thoughts on that, John?
I think Cyclone was an interesting choice. A relatively new character to the DC comic books, much less the universe. I just kind of wish they could have used her a little bit more. They kind of touted her genius IQ at the beginning of the movie. It would have been nice to kind of examine that a little bit more during the film. But as far as Atom Smasher is one of those that I've loved a long time, ever since he was in Infinity Incorporated as Nuklon. With the mohawk and everything, Todd McFarlane drawing him.
I was just going to say the one thing I know about Infinity Inc. is that Todd McFarlane drew that. So I've seen some of those images just from a Google share. And that's like pre-Spidey Todd McFarlane. So like
exactly. Yeah. Just
style is a little bit more reined in back then,
And
it
I
was
think
like,
the reason
what if the webs go everywhere?
Exactly.
What if he can bend in ways that a human body could never bend?
What if Peter Parker would snap in half if he jumped off a building?
What
that
if he
way?
could bend in the fourth dimension?
Anyway, I'm sorry, John.
Oh, no, that's all right. That's all right. But I think the reason why he's included in the movie is because in the comic books, he and Black Adam have a very interesting storyline when Atom Smasher kind of comes to see why Black Adam does what he does, because he himself does the same thing. So I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but
no, I mean, well, and then there's like the big spoiler we have to talk about, but let's focus on this for a bit. And I mean, The Rock was going around spoiling that when he was doing press for the movie, so it's not that much of a secret. But Jeff, hearing about these characters on there, does it make you more excited for the movie to know that you're going to, I mean, obviously it's in the advertising for it, but to hear us talk about Dr. Fate and Hawkman, are you more excited about those or equally as excited to see Black Adam on the big screen, Jeff?
No, the only thing that would have gotten me into the theater, almost did, was Brosnan. It was knowing, because as soon as he was cast, I thought, this is genius casting. It looks good. I mean, it's a cool way to go. McFarlane, by the way, only got that job on Infinity Inc. because the guy that they had hired died.
Oh my gosh!
Halfway into drawing one of the issues, Don Newton, and so they just had to bring McFarlane in quickly to take over. And so he got to do about, I don't know, what did he do, about 6 issues, John, or so?
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
even know
well,
that.
and-
It's kind of
and-
like how George Perez got the Justice League gig.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, Dick Dillon. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jeff Winstead is of course a human IBID, human footnote. So always getting information like that. So and I will say, not knowing, I've seen the character Dr. Fate. I've read Crisis thanks to you and things like that. I've seen him in action. I didn't know what to expect, but man, everything they had him do visually looked great. It was like really, it's like I kind of want a Dr. Fate movie. But I guess we shouldn't get too attached to him because he knows his own fate.
Yeah, I'm glad they differentiated that visually from Doctor Strange, because I thought that was going to be a problem they were going to run into, is how did they introduce their own magic guy without having it just seem like a knockoff of a guy who was the derivative character in the first place.
It's so funny with all these characters like Thanos and stuff. They're all derivative of DC, but they just got it first in the movies. So everyone's like, "Was it just a was it Darkseid? Was it a Thanos?" It's like, oh fucking.
Yeah, they're getting him back with Namor, who does predate Aquaman by I think a couple of years, right? And so.
Oh, that's right.
But other than that.
Right, but the characterization of Namor, it's always like, oh yeah, so it is basically, Aquaman,
Even lamer Aquaman. Now Aquaman's cool because they got Jason Momoa to do it. He was always made fun of, but like Namor still looks dumb.
Don't you know that he has sex with fish though? So does that change your?
They both do. Yeah, it's okay.
It made me like him more, in all honesty.
Love is love.
What about Hawkman? Are you concerned, kind of hearing Will's criticism of how he's portrayed on screen, Jeff?
Not really. I mean, that was a weird one anyway. The character looks great. Like the costume looks really cool. They changed the color scheme some. But DC even has had a hard time with that character ever since Crisis, actually. They tried to reconcile various. There's the Golden Age version, which is the version that is on the screen here. And then they had done a version in the 60s where he and his wife are space cops. Mm-hmm. So it's a same character name, completely different origin. Which is my favorite version of the character. And so they've been trying to fix that for, 30 plus years now. So it really doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want to the movie. It's almost like it's so convoluted. It's almost a blank slate.
Yeah.
Jeff, you and I were talking before we got started, and Atom Smasher seems like another one of those ones where Ant-Man Giant Man is the character that came second. But of course, people are going to see Atom Smasher and be like, oh, okay, so Ant-Man?
Right. And so Atom Smasher himself is a legacy character for the Atom, the Golden Age version of the Atom, though, not the one from the Silver. DC's weird with how they had different continuity. They basically, when the 60s hit, all the characters got science fiction origins because that was the soup de jour of the day, and just took the same names, just rebranded the characters, and they have to reconcile that. But yeah, so Atom Smasher, like he's actually a newer character from 84 or so.
Mm-hmm. But this character, his uncle had been Atom Smasher, and I'm actually blanking.
Adam.
I'm blanking on the cameo as to who that was.
Do you want to spoil it? Oh, I don't know if Jeff wanted to spoil
it. Oh, cool. No, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah. And
I was like, I know it's really good, but why can't? It's only Professor Cousineau as it.
That's right. Yeah. But it's only like a 2-second shot of him on a cell phone going like, "Great job," and then that's
I would like to see that. I would like to see the line in the budget of what Henry Winkler got paid to basically, be on FaceTime for 4 minutes.
Send a cell phone video to
Funny.
production. Yeah,
that's hilarious. But,
So,
and John's right. That storyline in the comics that has him. Sort of understanding Black Adam's way of thinking is one of the better Black Adam stories, and actually DC just republished that as a tie-in to this movie with a fancy rock photo cover.
Oh,
actually, that's one of those things that for some of you know that I do a show for the Geekscape Network called the Geekscape Book Club. And our November entry is going to be this Black Adam Dark Age, but look who's on the cover. They go ahead and it's like, we might sell a couple more if we throw the rock on it. I've never read any Black Adam stories. I don't know. I assume he was in Crisis, but honestly, I don't remember because so many people were in Crisis.
So. That's exactly right. He shows up in the background, and he's a Golden Age character, but he only had one Golden Age appearance.
Yep.
And DC. DC
was it Jerry Ordway who resurrected him?
No, he was. Yes and no. So he was first resurrected in the Shazam comic when DC started publishing that themselves. After they sued Fawcett Comics out of existence, they took ownership of all the characters, and they brought him back for an issue of that, and then they brought him back for a DC Comics Presents, which was a team up one issue thing with Superman and Shazam, or Captain Marvel at the time. And then after Crisis, they did one failed reboot of Shazam, where he was the main villain of a 4-issue miniseries called Shazam: A New Beginning.
Okay.
That was, I think it was John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake.
Oh wow!
Did that, and that's pretty good, but that didn't really stick. I mean, it stuck a bit through the when they introduced Captain Marvel in the Justice League, the J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen Justice League. But yeah, Jerry Ordway then a bit later, I guess was at mid-90s, did Power of Shazam. Graphic novel, and that's sort of the definitive. That's the one that stuck, at least until the New 52, the definitive origin of Black Adam, and tying him into the Shazam, the whole back, like making it an integrated backstory. That essentially would have been a good movie in and of itself. Like you could just take that graphic novel and make a movie with both characters, which I'm a little surprised they didn't do the first time out instead of doing.
I'm glad you made that
stories.
point, Jeff, because I wanted to ask both Will and John: are you disappointed that there wasn't any tie-in with Shazam?
Yes.
Because of the fact that obviously their origin is essentially the same. They're very similar characters in that sense. And who said yes? Did you say yes? Or John said yes?
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I would have really appreciated if he had been in that mid-credits scene, either replacing or accompanying the person who was there. Should we just go ahead and spoil it if it's not already out there?
Yeah. Do you know the mid-credit scene, Jeff, in this movie? The Rock was putting it out there a lot, and
it was everywhere, and he totally telegraphed it.
So,
I think you wanted people to go see the movie, obviously, so you wanted to make sure wink.
We talked about it last week on the Bladtcast without me wanting to spoil it. Is I get it in that way of like it could actually convince people to actually go see it, but it's also like, oh man, that's so cool if you don't have any idea. And this is our last chance for people avoiding spoilers. But yeah, so Superman's there, and that scene apparently was shot without Henry Cavill in it. It was possibly not going to be used. There's a lot to it, and he shot his part of it like in September, so like last month, somewhere in England. So he was working on something else. So it was like it could have been like the Shazam sort of end credits thing, where you just see him from the neck up. Which I think if they went to that well 2 times, people would be annoyed, and I would say just don't put him in there. So if it had been Shazam at the end of it, might have made more sense, but I think people would have also been not as excited. Is that? Do you think that's fair, John?
Yes, I think so. I think that ideally you have Superman saying his line with Shazam standing behind him, because of course Shazam is still the kid at heart, and the inexperienced one. So you kind of have both of them together. I think that would have been the best way to go about it, but that's just me.
Would you have liked to have seen Shazam in this, Will?
Maybe a little bit. I didn't feel it missing during the movie. Sure. I actually thought that you did a lot more Shazam related stuff than I imagined that they would do, because we've already kind of had that. And it's like, you see that trailer right before the movie that like, it's not 100% necessary. Also because most of the action takes place over the course of like 2 days. So I mean, there could be some kind of like little thing that they could have teased at, which they did in Shazam, actually saying like the one seat or whatever, the 7th person was missing, the 8th person, or whoever, like Black Adam being that additional character. And so maybe in Shazam 2, they'll kind of get more into it now that this is released. But I don't know. They shook up their release schedule. I think that was supposed to come first. So
it was, yeah.
Who fucking knows?
Shazam 2, Book of Shadows.
Book of Shadows.
It's important to stick with that. We'll also accept Electric Boogaloo. In terms of the characterization, we got
Bridget Shazam's baby.
No, that's yeah, that's right. It is Bridget Shazam's diary.
Yeah.
No, baby. In terms of the characterization we got of Black Adam, Will, do you think that they got the tone right? Jeff, did you want to chime in on something we were talking about? I thought you might have been signaling for a taxi.
Yes. Didn't they also pull the Superman's in shadow at the end of Peacemaker 2, where they didn't show Henry Cavill? It was just like
They
it was a
didn't.
Superman,
They didn't
but it
show
wasn't
like
The three.
They
the
only
Trinity didn't get
showed
shown.
Flash
Right.
and Aquaman, and they
They
weren't
were
even
too
sure that they
expensive.
were going to
Yeah.
get the two of them. They thought that they
Right.
weren't going to get any of them. Actually, they were prepared for that, and then they were just happy with what they got. Which was a very funny moment. Did you watch Peacemaker, Jeff?
I watched about half of it before my HBO Max subscription ran out, but I got
That's
the
the
idea.
worst part. You're like, I get it.
I got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Peacemaker
He's-
is buff.
he's
He's making
making-
underwear.
He's making peace with guns.
Yeah.
Will, do you feel like, in terms of the characterization, obviously, he points out in this movie he's not a hero. He talks about his moral code. Do you think that they did a good job walking that line in this telling of Black Adam, Will?
No.
Okay.
I think it's entertaining, but as soon as they cast The Rock as the main character, Black Adam, I'm like, great. Well, he's not going to be the Black Adam that he's supposed to be. I mean, at least in terms of the way that he's been portrayed in the comics I read, because Jeff Johns and they kind of brought him back around as a big character in like the early 2000s, and he kind of had some staying power throughout those different crises going on. But he was always kind of like a psychotic dictator who was like a superpowered, crazy dictator. And maybe this character can go off down that path. But as soon as The Rock was like, I want to be Black Adam, I was like, okay, but then we have to do that thing where you're a villain, but you're really not a villain, because at the end you kind of have to be a hero because it's your movie, and you got to you could just see that writing on the wall, and it was exactly like beat for beat that movie. And I was like, it's fine, I'm not pissed at it. It's just Black Adam's a evil motherfucker, and like he is not a good guy. Maybe he's like begrudgingly helped some people here and there, but at least as I've come to know him, is like he's a big threat, but he's not really on anyone's side but his own. And he's horrible to his own country. But that's
Right. And I think that the idea of having The Rock as a character, having it be a big movie like this, they probably wanted to soften him a little. Obviously we're setting up possibly a Superman versus Black Adam movie where they'll probably fight for 8 minutes and then they'll team up against a common enemy. And remember, it is exactly 8 minutes in Batman vs Superman that they actually fight.
Well, the good team up would be Shazam and Superman versus Black Adam. That's a pretty legendary fight. That would be
cool great.
to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, there would be some extra DC movie villain where it's like, actually, there's a devil at the end of this, or at the end of Wonder Woman, even though it's emotionally, thematically, completely tied up. Here's a 20-minute
somebody
fight
pulls
with
off their
Ares.
face, and it's Tom Cruise
it's
as
another
Ethan
villain.
Hunt from the Mission Impossible franchise. And like,
Yeah.
what? Tom
Doing
Cruise?
all his own stunts. He turned himself into a monster just to do that.
What do you think?
That's the final
John?
stage of Scientology.
Exactly.
He's going fully clear in this movie.
Yeah.
He's a Thetan level 12. now.
Yes,
That's
right.
what that means. John, what did you think? Do you agree with Will's assessment that you wanted a different characterization, or did it work more for you, Black Adam, in this film?
No, he's definitely right about how Black Adam really is at heart an asshole, and can be very, very cruel. But yeah, like Will said, when you see The Rock as the star, and you got to have a guy that at least seems redeemable. And I think also movie-going audiences want that regardless, especially in a superhero movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of the way it's going to be, whether we like it or not.
Unless he's the villain of a movie,
Right,
like
right.
But when he's the main character, I'm like, well,
Yeah.
fuck, now you can't really like be the villain later.
Yeah.
Exactly. If he's the titular hero, then that's the way it's going to be.
Right.
Dominicus Saxon says, I'm glad he killed people. It fits their version of the character with a lot of unresolved rage against oppressors. Ivan Soto asks, isn't Black Adam an anti-hero? From what you guys are saying, he's talking about in the comics. I
He's
feel
not like
he's
a Punisher kind of person.
right. That's an anti-hero. That's
yeah.
That's,
in his mind, sometimes he is, but not
Right.
the actual actions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So Jeff, as you hear Will and John talk about this in terms of what they saw on screen, having not seen the movie, ideally, how would you think that this character should behave on screen? And does it sound like you don't get that in this film?
Yeah, ideally, I probably would have done the first movie just be both characters, Captain Marvel / Shazam and Black Adam together, so you could play them off against each other. But yeah, he's you have to take, you're only getting a Black Adam movie because The Rock did it. I mean, it's a bizarre character to give a movie to.
Yeah.
So if Dwayne Johnson didn't feel that he looked like the character anyway, we would not have gotten this movie. So I guess, I'd rather have the movie than not.
I mean, obviously he looks like the character. Look, he's
of
on
course,
the book.
yeah.
Me and
right.
my buddy Kelly want to start a riot of #release the pixie ears cut, because the one thing he's missing is his little
exactly
his little fairy ears.
Yeah.
Oh,
He could have done it.
And he could have done the receding hairline.
Really intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that's a great question though? It made me think. Well, I'm about to ask a great question, I guess is what I'm really trying to say. Thank me, Jeff. Is this one of the more surprising characters to find out? Like, oh, they made it. Specifically keeping it to DC. Like, oh, was this one of the more surprising ones to find out that they were doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, to get a Black Adam movie before getting, before a solo Flash movie comes out, before a reboot of Green Lantern comes out. I mean, it's absurd. But take what you can get. I mean, it's interesting. You can understand Marvel going deep into the bench because they've already played out so many of the A-listers.
Wow, and Marvel had the misfortune / good financial fortune to have sold off their most famous characters before they decided, like, hey, what if we made movies? Oh wait, we don't have. So I guess, wait a minute, our A-list is Iron Man. Really?
Yeah.
We're gonna start with Iron Man. Yeah. So
but you start with Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr.
That's different. That's a great point. Yeah, I think that's how you make up for it. I mean, DC being owned by Warner Brothers, they always had Superman and Batman to start with. But yeah. So what about you, Jeff? Sorry, I just talked to Jeff. John. Jeff Johns. Wait, what did I just do? Or John Jeffs. John, what did you? Were you particularly surprised, or is there a character that you've gotten where you've already been like beyond surprised that they were like, wow, they either as a lead or featured in a movie? Not really like a cameo in
movies that I'm surprised ever made it into the big screen. In fact, number one on that list is the first Shazam movie at the post-credit scene with Mr. Mind, the little worm creature.
Oh,
That's number one. I never thought that would ever make it.
Is that going to be in Shazam?
God, I hope so.
I think they're going to probably continue to string that character along until they can really figure out how to do it, because whoever the villains are not.
It's Mr. the Furies, the Greek Furies in the next movie. But I mean, they kind of teased a Savannah Mr. Mind team up, and I love Mark Strong.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just anything he does, I want to watch it. So I would love to see him back. And even if he's playing sidekick to a freaking worm, I want to see that in the movie.
The one big redeemable piece of Green Lantern as Sinestro, he did a great job, and he looked great too. I was like, oh, we got this one thing perfectly right. But
Yeah, don't get me started on that. I can
not a fan of Mark Strong. Christopher Eccleston. I read a quote from him just the other day. They worked on something and they were like, oh, we weren't supposed to like each other on the show or movie. So it worked out that I didn't like him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But he's like, but his performance was great. He tried to soften it a little bit.
Okay.
I disagree with this comment from Dominicus Saxon. DC needs to figure out what the audience wants before they bury themselves. I think they need to figure out what they want, as in and I do want to actually talk about, about the big news that they made.
Mm-hmm.
But do any of the three of you feel like they should be? Look, I think it's important to listen to your audience and consider it. Have it be part of the decision making. But I don't think you should, react by, I don't know, replacing Zack Snyder with Joss Whedon. Yeah. We said his name earlier, but
It
Joss
worked.
Whedon.
It
You know,
worked that
I
one
think,
time.
and I think it's, there's, so I think that they shouldn't really put too much weight on what is perceived that the audience wants. What do you think, John?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, you do want to take the audience into account, but at the same time, the greatest stories are going to come from when you take it to a place where people aren't expecting.
Mm-hmm.
When
Yeah.
you challenge them mentally and creatively, that's where you're going to get your great stories. And people might not like it at first, but once they kind of take it in and think about it, they realize, wow, this is really good. I mean, if talking about Superman, one of my favorite stories, and I think it's a lot of people's favorite, is Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman series, which goes off into all kinds of crazy ideas, but it is so fantastic. You just have to absorb it in. Now, I'm not saying that you can do that cinematically, but if you can at least just take it into a place where nobody's expecting and challenge them with it, I think people will go along if they love the characters enough.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Will, in terms of listening to the fans and providing fan service?
It's like a bit of both, because this movie really only exists obviously because of The Rock, and that's The Rock's approach. He's constantly going like, we deliver for the fans, like we want, and it always shows because he makes the same movie over and over and over again. So like I understand, like I can't fault the guy for striking while the iron's hot, but like Skyscraper, it's like, okay, but he's like, with fans, Rampage, like it's just okay, all right, cool. And this is like kind of still in the same mold where he has the executive producer power and the star power for when people are like, what if we tried to like make it a little deeper, a little bit better as a script? He'd be like, but the fans want to see X, like they need this action, they need these beats, and he gets to make those shots. And so like my fear is I just have a little too much sway in the future, because I'm like, that man can't be in charge of creating stories. But I do think audiences have gotten spoiled in that content is often now, in some ways, like the Rise of Skywalker kind of approach, like catered to them apologetically. Like, we're so sorry we fucked up with the last one. Like, and it's like, just own it. God, people are going to see the Star Wars movie anyway. Like, don't go back on everything. Like, well, actually, this is what it is because we couldn't bear to hurt people's little feelings. Like, there are times where even for me as a fan, I'm like, fuck fans. God, they ruin things sometimes. They just get, like, sometimes it's nice to go into something and just have your expectations be some surprise, and like not know, as opposed to like, it should be this, otherwise it's fucking bullshit. And,
it's like they say in Clerks, this job would be great if it weren't for the fucking customers.
Right, exactly.
It's like, if we could just make these movies and people buy tickets, but they don't tell us what they just give us money, and then it's fine.
And I think that's why I'm always going to be this apologist for Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, because the studio and the storytellers were like, we're just going to do a fucking crazy version of these, like, especially with Batman vs Superman. Like, we're going deeply internal with these characters and we're deconstructing them. We're not going to give you the Batman Superman movie you think you wanted. And they did not. And people were like, boo. And it's like, I actually don't think structurally it's a garbage movie. It's just not the movie people wanted. And I think it has merit for that reason, because there's also, like, if I want to feel the joy of Superman, like, I'm going to watch Superman 1 or 2 with Christopher Reeve. It's still there. It's not in the sun. It didn't get burned up. Like, no one's childhood is destroyed. Like, the good and the bad can exist simultaneously, and taking risks, I think, sometimes has more value. So I like to think that with this big new announcement and the people in charge, that comes with a lot of fan trust. And then as an extension, they'll trust the risks that he wants to take, because, his kind of movies and the characters that he's introduced to audiences have been left turns and have been consistently well received. So I think people will be like, yeah, he can kind of do whatever he wants.
Yeah. Before we spend our last few minutes talking about the big DC Studios announcement, Jeff, I want to ask you the same question, sort of in terms of what you have seen, in terms of content they've provided. Do you think that listening to the audience is more important than they've made it seem, or maybe they've put the right amount of importance on it thus far?
Yeah, it's an old cliche, but the trick is to give the audience what they don't know they want.
Yeah.
And so you want to do something clever that they're not expecting, but you want them to say, this is not what I expected at all, but I fucking loved it.
Mm.
Yep.
And I think that's always the trick. And people forget, like talking about Robert Downey Jr., half of the people thought that was terrible casting
Right.
until they saw the movie.
Yeah, and they
You know.
didn't they couldn't get an insurance policy on him, so
Right.
they're bad for that reason too.
There's that too.
Yeah.
I remember Gail Gadot getting some blow. She's too skinny. She's not muscly enough.
Right.
And now everybody acts like they loved her from the outset. You know,
Yeah.
so there are ways to do it where this is exactly what we expected, but it really works out. But that's always the trick, is knowing what that magic is. Like Peacemaker probably seemed to be a huge hit,
Right.
but there were no expectations for it, which
Yeah.
probably helped.
Exactly. And interestingly, that huge hit ties into what I wanted to sort of wind things down with. This announcement just yesterday on the 25th of October. James Gunn and Peter Safran are going to lead film, TV, and animation division for DC Studios. And I think it's significant that film, TV, and animation, because those really can complement each other if you don't have it rigidly separated. And James Gunn, in the days since this, he responded to somebody who said, too bad you're not going to be directing movies anymore. And he says that this doesn't mean that. So that was my concern, was that he wouldn't direct more movies. I also think it's very funny that this never would have happened if the Twitter mob hadn't chased James Gunn away from Guardians Volume 3.
Isn't it funny? Yeah, it actually really is because of
That's like he probably would have kept doing stuff for Marvel. And someone on Twitter that I don't know, but someone had commented on it. They go by Bean Walrus. I don't know. And they said Kevin Feige accidentally creating his own arch nemesis is such a beautiful comic book arc. Oh no, I accidentally dropped a trauma director in a radioactive vat of IP. So I wanted to give him credit for that, because that's not my idea. It was
That's
very
funny.
Yeah. And so this idea that basically, he's sharing it, but I think it's important that he's sharing it because he's still going to direct. To me, I think this is a great choice going forward. You went with Zack Snyder, mixed results. Let's just say the majority of people weren't happy. This, I think, critically, people are happier, and I appreciate his work. Will, I know that at least one Guardians movie you didn't like, but so that's why I'm going to start with you. Do you think that this is good news, that he is at least a co-head of what DC does going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the passion for those characters is there. I mean, you don't get the Suicide Squad with all. I mean, we think seeing the Justice Society in Black Adam is like, wow, I never thought I'd see Dr. Fate. Like, no one ever thought they were going to see like the Weasel and fucking some of those really obscure Suicide Squad characters, most of whom died.
Whoever that Rat Girl is, I assume
Ratcatcher 2, not the first one, the second one. Yeah. I think they were this close to Condiment Man, but they got Polka Dot Man instead, and like it was a hugely important character. Like, so
Polka
that
Dot
guy
Man was actually really important.
Yeah. And David Dust Melchior was great, and so like that guy has the keys to the kingdom in terms of being like, hey, I want to do fucking whatever I want, and they were basically like, okay, and they're like, oh, it turned out great. So
it's like, wait, so I can allude that that Aquaman fucks fish? Yeah, whatever.
Right. And the Peacemaker show, and I remember reading from James Gunn, they're like, what movie are you going to do next? Are you going to do like more DC movies? And he was like, I had a lot of fun doing television, because he wrote all the episodes of that show. So I think his brain is like now uniquely primed for serialized storytelling, which is comic book movies and comic books in general. So like that kind of oversight, I think is going to be good. And he's funny. So there's always going to be a little humor, which goes a long way. And I feel like he's knowledgeable, and I think it's the kind of person who, as opposed to what's been happening with DC stuff in the past, there'd be a huge misstep, and then the whole company would be like, we got to shut it down, left turn, like overcorrect. It's like, no, just stay the course. And if something is less popular than another thing, or one thing bombs, like just fucking pursue your goddamn plan. Stop trying to, this ship is just like going in circles, and now the Flashpoint story in the movie is probably going to be a moot point. So who knows?
Well, I think cooler heads are starting to prevail in that it's like, no, the problem wasn't that Henry Cavill was Superman. Let's not do away with that. He got one standalone movie,
Right.
And so and I think it's like, the dark Batman stuff, that's different. Like let's have Affleck or some iteration of that. Jeff, what do you think when you hear this news that James Gunn is going to really be one of two people in charge of the uniform vision for this not this franchise but this universe?
Yeah, I'm happy for the change, and I'm optimistic. Although I almost wish I could take a combination of Snyder and Gunn. Like,
sure.
I am concerned that all the movies are going to be super jokey until there's like a very saccharine, sweet moment at the end where they're all very sweet characters, after all, even though they say fuck all the time. So yeah,
and they will.
So, but it doesn't always have to be serious as a heart attack the way Snyder's movies were. So maybe some combination of that. And I suspect Gunn's got enough sense that he'll find that middle ground depending on the material. Like every movie can't be. Green Lantern shouldn't be a Suicide Squad movie. Shouldn't be that tone.
Right.
If we ever get to a new Green Lantern, or maybe they'll bring Ryan Reynolds back now that they're seem to be bringing everybody else back.
Yeah. Well, the Green Lantern series, I guess they just announced actually earlier today that it's going to focus on Jon Stewart and not Hal Jordan, which leaves the door open for Ryan Reynolds.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. Or me as Guy Gardner. Come on, I'm still waiting for my fucking part to be cast.
He's the one that's a jerk, right?
Kyle Rayner, man.
Kyle Rayner, that's right. We've talked about
right.
Guy Gardner's the one who gets punched in the face, right?
Yeah.
Big Boots gets punched in the face.
He's kind of my favorite. So
Silly
I'd like to
he's awesome. Yeah.
What do you think, John, in terms of James Gunn? Do you have and let's talk about the fact for our visual audience that you're joined by a feline friend, one of the stars of the bonus episode of Sandman on Netflix.
Yeah, this is Oliver. He's the asshole of the group, but obviously he's lovable too. Anyway, I actually have to kind of echo exactly what Jeff said. I mean, I would love a little bit of Zack Snyder and a little bit of James Gunn, because I love the layers that Zack Snyder at least attempts to put in his movies before the executives from Warner Brothers get in the way and start cutting things out of the movie.
Yeah.
At the same time, I would like a little bit of a fun and a little bit lighter tone that Gunn brings to his productions. So I like the idea, and like Jeff said, I'm optimistic. For me, probably a little more cautiously optimistic, but I'm looking forward to see what happens.
Yeah, we've talked on this podcast over the years, Will, that it's not true, but I always leaned on this rumor that the rule one for DC movies was no jokes.
Well, that was the no joke policy was the thing that people
and
believed.
There's a couple of jokes, I mean, even the Christopher Nolan movies have jokes, and I don't mean the Joker, so like, it's usually like, okay, 3 jokes and that's it. And look, I think not using like Ant-Man as an example, there are definitely Marvel movies where I'm like, okay, we get it. Do we need this many jokes?
It's funny.
Yeah. There's times where it's the right number of jokes. I think Thor Ragnarok versus Thor Love and Thunder, which I know a lot of people didn't like. I was fine with it, but Ragnarok, right amount of humor. Love and Thunder was like, let's just turn up Guns N' Roses some more, okay? Let's go do that.
And now there's that Dungeons and Dragons movie that's like cut with another Led Zeppelin song that's essentially filmed and marketed as if it was Thor without Thor. Like the font, I'm like, oh, this is just the marketing for Thor, but there's no Thor in this movie.
Will and I saw the trailer for Dungeons and Dragons before.
Chris Pine.
So, with Chris Pine, and that's exactly what you said to me. He's like, this is Thor without Thor, and I'm like, yeah, actually, they're telling a story. It's like, what if we had Thor, but he never showed up?
Wow, he's coming.
It's like Samuel Beckett's waiting for Thor. It's like he'll be here in the 3rd act. Don't worry, he'll show up at some point. Jeff, I think that you're probably 40 days away from being able to see Black Adam on HBO.
That sounds
Max.
about
I think they do a 45-day window like Disney Plus does. So you already know what the spoiler is really, and then the rest of it. But I'll be interested to know what you think about it when you do get a chance to see it. And in the meantime, Jeff, we can tell people anything, if there's any news about the alternate, but as I mentioned earlier, the last battle of the Revolution by the one, the only Jeff Winstead. Look, there's 2 Jeff Winsteads on your screen right now. So for our visual audience.
Jeff,
More
real
stupidity.
fast, are you excited by? I feel like that blue Aquaman suit in the sequel that we've seen some photos of is like kind of reminiscent of that that series.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of it in that
Yeah.
way. Yeah, I'll have to check it out more
Miniseries
closely.
from the
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it's like 100% that inspiration, but I was like, I feel like where else would they have gotten that?
Give us a little nod to that. Yeah, that'd be
exactly.
great. Yeah.
Are you referring to the 80s miniseries that Jeff always liked? That's not when he has the hook hand, right? That's a different story.
No, that's the 90s. Doesn't that feel 90s hook hand? It's a very 90s sort of. Yeah.
I mean, remember in the 90s there was the Age of Apocalypse. There's the Wolverine who had his hand cut off, and it was like an adamantium stump, so he would just beat people over the head with it.
Always a face scar. Somebody had face scar.
That's true. Everybody had a face scar or a glowing eye or both.
Right. But I do have some comic book news about the alternate, which is it is coming out in print, those original 6 issues from Antarctic Press, starting in January. It's part of their Exciting Comics anthology.
Well,
so it'll run for 6
to me like
consecutive
we're
issues.
gonna have to get you a table at Comic-Con Revolution in Ontario if you're gonna have actual books you can sign.
That's a good point. Yeah, something to think about. Yeah.
And as always, Claremont will be there, so we'll see if we can get you in that neighborhood. Have some spillover of people waiting for him. That just tells me, they pay well. That's right. That tells me. And in any case, I'm excited to see where the alternate story goes. But it's great that people will be able to get physical printed issues.
Yeah.
John, if people want to find the Raging Rhino pod,
Raging Rhino podcast.
Yep. How do they do that?
At RagingRhinoPodcast.com. And of course, I will be doing a upcoming episode about Black Adam. I'll also be doing a upcoming travel log. My wife and I, for the week of our anniversary, we take that week off every year, and we try to go off someplace that we've never been to before. So this year we went to Biloxi, Mississippi, and spent a day up in Mobile, Alabama, kind of toward the third coast over there.
Wow.
And so I'll talk about a little bit about that, about places where you can go, things, fun things to see, and how even in the South, people can really screw up fried chicken.
Whoa! All right. I'm always interested in the way you tell a story, but I think I'm gonna want to dive into that one.
And real quick, just real quick, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Geelong Cats. This is the Australian football team. They are the 2022 champions. They are my favorite team from my favorite sport in the world. That's also on a recent podcast, so check that out too.
Well, speaking of champions and playoffs, I have to apologize for our baseball preview where we got everything wrong. Literally, we got everything wrong. Yeah. We started off with
use really foul language. Just real quick up front.
Yeah.
Fuck the Astros.
I mean, you're not gonna hear me say other than that. Our guest Devin Gordon started off a trend, just saying like, "Man, the Phillies are bad at baseball," and it's true they were most of the year, and here they are in the World Series. So we literally didn't know what we were talking about. So I have to apologize. Will Sterling, if people want to hear history, but maybe they don't like their history rated G or PG, is there a way that they could find that?
They can find it history rated R. That is my weekly podcast with my co-host, Dr. Craig Smith. We talk about all the fun things in history, and I say fuck a lot, and we drink. So, if that's the history podcast you've been looking for, here we are. Oh, yeah, cheers.
And I need to schedule our Wizard of Oz episode that I'm now insisting on recording with both.
I talked to Craig about it yesterday, and he said yes.
Great. All right, I'm going to have to remind myself on like all that stuff. But that's all right. And at Will Sterling _ because that guy just won't give it up.
Yeah.
The at Will Sterling. In any case, that was all the time we have for now. Thanks everybody for our thoughts on Black Adam. Thanks to John, Jeff, and Will. Our pal Jeff Duray would have joined us, but he was unable to see the movie this week. So just know that we put the invite out and he gave us a middle finger. No, he was under the weather this week, so we didn't see it. But we'll all see you soon. We'll see you next time on the Bladtcast.
Cheers.